I'm Sarah Perry, 94. We're excited to be co-hosting today's Pacific Islander Talk Story, part of DAPA's 25th anniversary in recognition of Indigenous Peoples Day next week. Today, we're showcasing Dartmouth Pacific Islander community with speakers of Native Hawaiian and Tongan descent. It gives me great pleasure to introduce today's co-host, Jacqueline Chappell. Jacqueline Kim Chappell is a 96, originally from Honolulu and returned to Hawaii about 20 years ago. Her mother is from Korea and her father is a California beach boy whose parents immigrated from Scotland. She teaches English and education in the University of Hawaii system.
Sarah Perry, 94, was born and raised in Hawaii on the island of Oahu. She is of Taiwanese, European, and Native American descent. She's the mother of 3 children, 5 chickens, and an English Springer Spaniel. She currently lives in Lafayette, Colorado, where she is a biodynamically trained craniosacral therapist. So while the Pacific is much broader than what we're representing here today, we hope to open up the discussion on the experience of flourishing at Dartmouth as a Pacific Islander Indigenous young adult. Here are today's speakers.
So first, it gives me great pleasure to introduce Keli'i Opula'oho, a 96, whom I got to know during our time together at Dartmouth. Keli'i is a biracial Chinese Hawaiian gay man and parent, born and raised on the island of Oahu. He recently returned to Hawaii after working on the mainland, most recently in New York City. He has worked in human resources for over 20 years. Keli'i is currently the president of the Dartmouth Club of Hawaii, co-president of NAB, and a proud Dartmouth parent. Next, here to give us a more recent Dartmouth perspective is Kalaa Harmon, 23, who was born and raised on the Big Island of Hawaii in Puna, where she graduated from a Hawaiian language immersion school. She currently works as an intern at Tamalpais Trust, an Indigenous-led philanthropic trust that provides funding opportunities that support Indigenous organizations and funds.
Ian, is Ian here? We don't know. Okay, hopefully Ian will be able to join us in a little bit. Ian Tapu, he, him, is an 08 who was one of the first Tongan Americans to attend Dartmouth College. He was born and raised in Hawaii with family ties to Samoa and Tonga. Tapu, or Ian, earned a JD from the University of Hawaii Richardson School of Law, where he was an Ulu Lehua scholar. Damien Kopono Chong Hansen, 03, MD, was raised primarily in Iowa. He attended medical school at the University of Southern California Keck School of Medicine, and today serves as the medical director for Ho'ola Lahui Hawaii Kauai Community Health Center. He also serves as the chair of the advocacy committee for the Association of Native Hawaiian Physicians and is a board member for Kauai Hospice. So the first question we have for everyone, we would like you to share a story. So how was attending Dartmouth as a Pacific Islander? And then can you share one experience that kind of characterized the overall experience? If Ian is not here, I guess we'll start with Kalaa.
Yeah, I think for me, moving from Ke'o, which is a very small town on the island of Hawaii, all the way to Hanover, New Hampshire, it was definitely a transition for me. The school I graduated or attended was a very small school, and everything was taught through the medium of Hawaii, and so everything it was definitely different for me to be speaking English every day and also being in bigger classes because I had at Kekula'o Nawahiokalani Opu'u, which is the high school I attended, there were only 10 of us in our graduating class. So very, very different moving to Dartmouth. But I think what helped with my transition the most was the Native American program. I think we had a pre-orientation prior to the first week of classes during freshman fall. I got to meet a lot of Indigenous students from all over, and I was also introduced to some of my, I guess, Native Hawaiian fellows who have lived on the mainland, and they were very interested in, you know, getting to know one another. And throughout the years, we've gotten very close. And I would bring up one story. It's about Gabe Gilbert. He's a 23 as well. And he lived in Virginia for most of his life, and also lived in Honolulu for like 3 years when he was smaller. But all of his life he's been trying to connect back to his culture and his language. And he heard one of the Code Switch podcasts that I did with my mom on NPR, and he was super excited to meet me in person. And it was so funny. The first day I met him, I was super, super shy. He was like, "Are you Kala Harmon? I heard about you, and I want to be friends with you." That's literally what he said. And ever since then, I've been he's inspired me to continue what I do now with language revitalization. Whether it's, you know, strengthening my own Hawaiian, but also teaching what I can to others, especially my peers at Dartmouth. So yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Kali, do you want to?
Sure, Jackie, and thanks everybody for joining. This is really an honor to have been asked to speak about being Pacific Islander, and for DAPA's anniversary going into next year, that's a great way to sort of celebrate, and I'm glad that we get to be a part of this. So I think for me, the experience, I grew up in Hawaii. I'm from Pearl City, and I went to Punahou School, and that may not, people may not know the school itself, but we have like one sort of, big name alumni who is Barack Obama, and I think most people have heard of him. And so, he graduated from Punahou the year I started kindergarten, and then it would be much later, when I would go to Dartmouth. But that was sort of the upbringing that I had. So being Pacific Islander, having gone to that school from kindergarten to 12th grade, unlike Kala, was, there was some exposure to Hawaiianness. We had Hawaiiana in 3rd grade. We had, social studies in 7th grade where we were focusing on it. May Day pageants where we learned some hula, and, we danced for, 13 years there. And that was about all I kind of knew about being Pacific Islander. But my other half was Asian because my mother is Chinese and she was 3rd generation Chinese American, which made me 4th generation. And I participated a lot in sort of my Chinese side of the family, which was very prominent in my upbringing. So when I went to Dartmouth, I really thought I was going to be Chinese, and I kind of went to Dartmouth Asian Organization at the time, and I was like, didn't really fit there. I'm like, the folks didn't really look like me. The experience was totally different. The storytelling was different. So then I ended up sort of, trying to find a place for me. And I think as a Pacific Islander, as a Native Hawaiian, it was with the Native American program. And, having gone to Hanover and probably wearing my parka, and it was still like October because I was so cold, my first time in the cold. I got a lot of support from the Native American program, who then the director was Colleen Larimore, if anybody remembers Colleen and Julie, and they were in either Collis or right there, and so that was a really central location. But I also found my space in residential life, and Scott Brown is here. I saw him join. He was area director when I was in a UGA and an area coordinator, which I don't know that they still have those programs. And then there was a lot of deans that I feel like took care of sort of the Pacific Islander Native American population, notably Holly Satea, Sylvia Langford. And so those people were really a big support on campus. I I learned a lot about diversity at Dartmouth, and right in orientation week when, there was an evening, and it was at Center Theater in the Hop, and lots of people were sharing different types of diversity experience, and for me that was really eye-opening, I think. And so I was taking my sort of identity and sharing that, and I think my approach from like all of the diversity that Dartmouth was bringing together 30 years ago in 1992 when I started, was just, be curious. And people were curious with me. I started with my name, it's Kali'i. Okay, well, where's that from? And then it's, oh, I'm from Hawaii. And then there's an interesting conversation that I think we get to have when there's, few sort of stereotypes that are indicating that experience. So as a Pacific Islander, I felt really welcomed. And because of my attending Puno, I felt really prepared. But I think, that curiosity helped me sort of become involved with lots of other like singing groups and, the symphony and the band. And I really went into music and art. but I think that it was always an openness of being Pacific Islander. What I would say is that it had very limited visibility. I think there was only one person who danced hula, Liz. She was a 93 at Powwow, and now there's so much more availability. So when you're looking around and you're trying to see what Pacific Islander experience there is available on campus now, it's so much greater. And I'm happy that we've moved to that place where there's a visibility, acceptance, and belonging on campus for Pacific Islanders, and that I think is refreshing. So I'll send that back to you, Jackie.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Kapono, you have such a different experience because you're coming from the mainland as ethnically Hawaiian.
Yeah. Aloha kako. Thank you for inviting me. I wanted to say a special shout out to Erin, who I knew as Nightbowl. I haven't talked to her since Dartmouth or shortly after, so I saw you attending. What's up, Erin?
Hello.
I grew up in Iowa. That's where my father's from. I kind of joke now, little did I know Jason Momoa was like an hour away from me. I didn't know very many Pacific Islanders. I think I can think of one Native Hawaiian that was in my area growing up. But I also grew up with sort of a strong sense that I'm Hawaiian, partially because I'm a descendant of Samuel Manaia Kalani Kamakau, who will say he's the most famous Native Hawaiian historian, but he's up there for sure, depending on what your opinion is. Very well known. And so it was always my family, even though I was on the mainland, always kind of hammered it home to me that I had Kuleana as a Native Hawaiian, and that formed my identity. My first name is Damien, and we had planned on using that for school. I'm named after Father Damien from the Kalaupapa, the leprosy colony, I guess you could call it, on Molokai. But it backfired in Iowa. People thought that they only knew the omen, and so they thought that we were like devil worshippers, and I was one of the handful of not completely white people in the school. So we just decided to go with Kapono. It'd be better to be Al Capone than be the devil child. So that's kind of like how that experience went. So it was always, getting those questions, what are you, and it was actually kind of easy for me to just say Hawaiian. It was the easiest way to explain it, even though I'm mixed too, I'm part Chinese as well. So overall, I feel really thankful to Dartmouth for the experience that I had. I'm not saying it was, like smooth sailing all along, but there were a lot of benefits for me as a Pacific Islander. I had similar experiences where I didn't get as connected to my Asian side as I was thinking I might through the Asian organizations, and I connected more with Native American programs, and through like powwow and our luau on campus for Hokupa'a. I think that's the last time I actually tried to learn to dance a hula was actually at Dartmouth. I've made up some fun ones on my own since then, but nothing like what we tried to do at Dartmouth. So I have to, and part of what I'm really thankful for is also the anthropology department. I majored in anthropology. My thesis advisor, John Watanabe, who just recently retired, connected me with Tai Tengan, who was an alum. I think he was 98, maybe?
97.
97? Okay. And yeah, I've reconnected, and I connected with Kaylee through this. So now we're kind of like reconnecting with all these connections with from Dartmouth grads. And then I know Kala knows his daughter who attends Dartmouth now. So I connected with Tai through him, through Professor Watanabe. And then Tai helped me connect with the larger Native Hawaiian community, particularly activists and more like academics. I did a thesis on Hawaiian feasting and spent time in Hawaii, doing that. So that was a big part of my, I think, development as a Pacific Islander, and then my reconnect, helping me reconnect with the culture, and then just also feeling more comfortable about who I was, and going back and forth from the kind of like more, I guess, haole world that I was used to in Iowa, and then, I guess what we tend to call like local culture in Hawaii. That was a big benefit for me. The event that I wanted to mention, I didn't go through myself, but it was the inspiration for my thesis. So it was a few years, I think I was actually just finishing up high school when I read about it, but there was this luau incident. And Aina Akamu, who now lives in, or is from Na'alehu, I think, and has moved back to Na'alehu, he protested this frat party that had called their party a luau. And my understanding was, is like, they didn't even have any food, you know, it was just kind of like scantily clad people and a bunch of drinks. And he pointed out, you know, like, that's not a luau. And he kind of argued, you know, there are some sacred aspects to luau's. So I'd heard about that. I connected with him at Dartmouth, and that really inspired my thesis. You know, how can there be such a misunderstanding about what a luau means? And there's, you know, very broad interpretations of it. So that's what I looked at with my thesis. And then, of course, there was the luau, our own luau that we were hosting, and how the Hokupa'a luau proceeded. Jackie, do you want me to just go on about my thesis?
So Kala, did you, so Kala, you actually started Hokupa'a, is that correct?
I did not
It
start.
was
Hokupa'a.
Thai.
That was Keili'i's era.
No,
Yeah.
it was after me. It was Tai Tangan and Ku'ule. Reyes, now Tangan, who's in 98, and Tai was in 97. And they started it, I think
So-
that Tai's senior year.
So was that started at all like in response to some of these events, or is the timeline off? Or Kala, do you want to talk a little bit about like how you responded to that in organizing Hokupa'a when you were there?
Well, maybe I should, can I jump in?
Yeah,
maybe?
no, go.
So I'm not exactly sure, but I think this incident came about around the time Hokupa'a started, or shortly after, based on the timing that I'm hearing. Hokupa'a was there when I was, you know, in college. And so maybe what I ended up wanting to look at in my thesis was different meanings of luau. And I think because I was recruited to play soccer, and I was a fraternity member, I was an AD member, and I think AD is de-recognized. It's not like we were the stand-up citizens of Dartmouth at that time either, at least in the administration's eyes. And, you know, I grew up in Iowa, where I kind of tell people, you know, like, ignorance is not the worst thing in the world if you're willing to learn and you're willing to try to respect. You know, there's a lot of people that really are just ignorant. They didn't mean anything by, you know, their actions. So I looked at in my thesis, you know, commercial luau like Paradise Cove or Germain's, but I looked at Paradise Cove on Oahu and how that luau was conducted and like kind of how it's sold. And looking at that, it's pretty easy to understand why people at Dartmouth that might have gone to that kind of luau would think that a frat party is appropriate. It's hypersexualized. There's food, but the food isn't that good, and there's plenty of drinks. You know, I mean, and so that would make sense, you know, if that's your only experience. And we compared that to, you know, I compared it to another luau, which was a housewarming luau in Molokai, which is completely unconscious, just natural. You know, it's just sort of like, this is what we do when we have a housewarming. And another one that was in Kahana Valley on Oahu, where the residents are only allowed to stay on the land there if they show to perpetuate the culture. So there was more of a conscious perpetuation of culture, like pounding poi with the stone poi pounders as a demonstration and education. So we're kind of looking at that. You know, these three, they're all called luau's, you know, like, so they can all have various different meanings. And I got Aina's point too about, you know, when you think about like a baby luau, that could be sacred. I mean, that is historically related to, you know, the tradition of only really introducing a baby once it's 1 year old as a person, because it's more likely to survive at that point. So that's what I was looking at. And then as I pass the baton to Kala, I just have been, we got to talk a little bit about the experience with luau's at Dartmouth, and Keili'i as well, because I believe his son also was recently at a luau. So from my time, from what sounds like it was a more challenging time for Keili'i, I feel like we had people like Tai Tangan, Ku'ule, who kind of opened the door and made it easier for people like me. You know, there were still challenges then, and since then it just sounds like it's improved. There's a lot more people. The experience sounded great, but I really just
Kapono.
want to hear more from Kala about it. Yeah.
Kapono or Kala, do you want to explain what Hokupa'a is for those here who might not know what it is?
Can I just say one thing? I'm a 97. I'm Kavika Tengan's classmate. And just a little bit of background on Hokupa'a. We started it my senior year. And we kind of got together. We had just a small group of Hawaii people. And it was just, we birthed kind of the first luau at Dartmouth, and we cooked, and we had people, you know, come in, like, I don't know, aunties, uncles from the East Coast that came up and helped us prepare the food, and it was a pretty successful event. And so it's nice to see what it has grown into. So anyway, that was the first, it was my senior year, 97, that the first luau and Hokupa'a came into being.
But Lonnie, I would also say that I don't know what the critical mass of Hawaiian students needed to be on campus for there to even be a luau. And before your class, I don't know that there was going to be many folks. Like Sarah and I were both there, and there wasn't like a huge Hawaii community or a group that, you know, would even be able to organize a luau. So I think you came at a sort of critical time where there was enough mass of
Yeah.
people that were interested and willing, and then carry it forward to, and I posted this picture. Claude, it's not the best picture from your luau, but it's the one that I had. Like, look how many people there were, and you know, that's not even the volunteers and the helpers or the family
I saw
members.
the pictures of last year. It was just really amazing, just to see how much it's grown. So yeah, very happy to see that. Anyway, that was all. Thank you.
Well, I just got a message from Aina. I feel like I have to call you out, Aina. I mean, like, if you were talking about you, do you want to chime in at all about that experience? Putting you on the spot, I know.
I'll just say aloha to everyone. It's very nice to see some of you. Some of you I haven't seen in a very long time. It's nice to see Nora. We started the Diversity Peer Program together. Thank you, Kali'i, for organizing this. And what's beautiful is that I know Kala's mom and I are classmates, and we're really good friends. I know Kali'i, I know Lani. So it was really nice. Ian, I'm not sure if Ian was on, but I remember I was one of Ian's debate judges when he was in high school at Kahuku. So it's nice to, you know, see what Ian is working on. I'm so proud of Kapono. You know, I still remember going to Kapono's house in Iowa, seeing where he's from and what that's all about, and being able to spend some time with him there. But I would say that my time at Dartmouth was really enhanced because of the Hawaiian people that I had around me. If it wasn't for Ui and Ku'ule and Kahikino, or Russell the Love Muscle, as we called him, if it wasn't for my, you know, Hawaiian friends and folks, I really wouldn't have made it. And I've been so thankful that Lani and Tai and, you know, Ku'ule and all of them started Hokupa'a, because it really helped us to create a presence for Hawaiians on campus. Perhaps the thing I'm most proud of out of all of this, and from that luau incident, was my senior year, we created the first Indigenous Sovereignty Conference at Dartmouth. We brought up Dr. Noinoi Silva. She presented us a copy of her Ku'e petitions. And I remember sitting at Lou's Cafe, and she told me, she goes, I don't know how you do it, because you are sitting in the cradle of power. Everybody at home can protest and do everything with the comfort of having other Hawaiians around them. And so that really made, you know, an impact on me. And so even though the luau experience, I would say, was, you know, definitely a difficult experience, it was, I think, an experience that we continue to learn from. And because of that, it definitely has its place, you know, in the history of Dartmouth, but also in the history of Hokupa'a as well. So yes, it's really nice to see all of you. And so thank you for just making this happen. Yeah, aloha, everyone.
Yeah, I know. It's nice to meet you after hearing a little bit about you.
Hey, thanks for reminding me. I forgot about the sovereignty conference. I mean, that was the hot topic of the time, and that was the kind of folks Tai got me connected with. I know I was going to tell you, Kehaulani Kawanui just visited me over here on Kauai. She's still a professor and writing about sovereignty, but we kept in touch all these years too. There's a question in the chat box about why the name Hokupa'a. I thought maybe maybe Kala can can tell about it. I know it's North Star, but I don't know
Or
anything
Lani.
much more beyond that, or more, yeah, or anybody could share. Yeah.
I think it might be a better question for Lenny to answer since yeah, it was they established or created the club, but in general Hokupa'a is just Polaris, North Star, but also Hokupa'a is to be steadfast as well. So the Native Hawaiian, or now it's Pan Pacifica Club, to be more inclusive of all the other Pacific Islands and their cultures and their heritage. I think it's just important for us to be steadfast in a, you know, a fast-paced community and to express ourselves freely. But I don't know, does Lenny have any more thoughts on the
Well, I
name?
think you nailed it. Yeah, I really do. And I think it was just, you know, it was an organization where we could come and support each other. And I think that was so important. Yeah, being so far away from home. So
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Sarah, did you want to?
Hearing all the panelists talk about the changes at Dartmouth makes me kind of feel jealous because as a 94, there's only 4 of us from Hawaii, and I went there not knowing anybody. So, and I, you know, being from Hawaii is something very special. Even on the mainland, if you meet somebody from Hawaii, you really feel like an instant connection because of that place that we come from. So, yeah, so the next question is, what are 1 or 2 things Dartmouth could have done to make you feel more seen or supported? I heard from like 2 of the panelists that you guys felt like maybe you had to choose one of your, you know, if you're multiracial, you had to choose one or the other. I'm just curious if there's anything you thought Dartmouth could have done better. And we can start with Kapono, please.
I mean, you know, I don't, at my time, I don't think they could have done something much better. You know, I shared Shelly Arakawa sought me out when I was there for a recruiting visit, which was cool, you know, just sort of have somebody that was I don't actually think she's Hawaiian, but associated with Hawaii. But you know, we talked story about the Arakawa store and just made me feel like there was a connection that was meant to be there. I had forgotten about this, but there was a Tongan soccer player who was a senior when I was getting recruited. And I remember sort of thinking that's cool too. He was from Aotearoa, New Zealand. So I mean, I think Dartmouth did a pretty good job, but when I hear what Kala, you know, like how many students are there now, I'm like, well, that would have been awesome. You know, I think there were only 3 of us in our class. Kapua Medeiros, and then I remember Sable Bruce. I ended up looking her up recently to see what happened with her, and she ended up graduating from somewhere else. Looks like she's doing well. And Kapua is actually a family practice doctor on Kauai here as well. We used to kind of like joke about that at Dartmouth about you'll be on the east side, I'll be on the west side, and that's kind of like what ended up happening in the end. But yeah, overall, I felt like Dartmouth really did a pretty good job for me. It sounds like they might be doing an even better job now. And my only suggestion would be that for the admissions office to keep in touch with guidance counselors in Hawaii, especially of the schools that tend to send more Dartmouth kids to Dartmouth, which are mostly, for better or for worse, are mostly private schools. But it's awesome to see that a student like Kala, who came from a small immersion school, also, you know, was able to navigate that.
I don't think when I went to Kapono, I think your perspective is interesting. I think when I went was when I matriculated in 1992, I don't think I was looking to be seen or supported as a Native Hawaiian person. I felt like, you know, like we're going to New Hampshire, and you know, we're trying to, you know, this is an Ivy League school and everybody's going to be smart, so like you're probably going to actually have to study instead of like, you know, do high school, which was easier, and you know, there was still differentiation in classmates. But then when you get to Dartmouth, everybody is smart, and then I really felt it was like just work really hard, and the support system that was in place. You know, you found support where you found it. I mean, for me, I was work studies, so I was at Dartmouth Dining Service, and that was a community of people. I was Native American, so the Native American program was community of people, and then Res Life, which has totally evolved now to I don't even know what they're called. They're called houses or something, communities. Whereas before I was in the river cluster, so we were so far out there that I felt like the residential support and community was there, and there was lots of how are you doing and whatnot, but I didn't really see a lot of Pacific Islanders around me, or I didn't even know where they were on campus if there were others. So it ended up being sort of deprioritized for me in a way that, wasn't detrimental. I was, I think for Native students, like graduating, getting in, matriculating is great, but graduating and finishing, and not all Native students do that easily. And so, I think when I see all of this group of people here and all of the other graduates who are on this call, we made it, right? And that was sort of the goal. And we still represent Hawaii no matter where we go. People are going to make that link between us. But I don't know that I asked or would have wanted to be seen or supported more in that way. I feel like it wasn't necessary for some reason.
Yeah, I think, that was like, you bring up a point. I don't think I expected it either, like what you're saying. And now that I think about it, it was more like Shelly and then like, Kui from the soccer team. I thought they more were like, to me, I'm like, oh, this is like a sign from God. I mean, like more like, oh, not like it was like, oh yeah, this is a great program. I was curious. So I feel like I'm taking this off in a different tangent, but I wanted to ask you, Kaylee, did your parents help you like go with you up there? My parents sent me with a big duffel bag, but I mean, I was going for preseason for soccer, and like now I hear, all these parents here in Hawaii going with their children to like get
Right.
them established up there. Which
No, my parents were teachers. My parents were both public school teachers in Hawaii, which is why I went to a private school, I think. Um, and so the school year had already started by the time we had to go up for orientation week. So no, I got dropped off at Honolulu Airport, and I had my trunk and a couple of bags, and the rest I had to buy in West Leb at like whatever the store. The stores are all different now. Like I don't remember. I think there's like Walmart and Costco there now, but whatever it was, Riches, I think was our store, and Kmart, and I bought the rest of the stuff that I couldn't bring. And my parents only came, not only, but they came for graduation, and they're like, when you're done in 4 years, we'll be there. And so, I want that to be different for my son. Like, I went up for freshman or first year parents and family weekend. I went up for luau and plan to keep doing that. Um, if he's on in the spring, even if he's not on this spring, I might still want to go because I feel really connected to Dartmouth from being Hawaiian, which I didn't really have when I was there. So I
Oh.
I have that as an alum.
Hala, can you say a little bit about your experience there?
Oh, experience like in Hokupa'a or
No. Yeah. So the question was, Sarah, what was the question again?
Well, actually,
Oh,
I
I-
wanted to go back and ask Keely if you wanted to mention something about the technology factor, because I think that was huge. I mean, so technology when we were there in the early 1990s compared to now.
Yeah. So not only did my parents only drop me off, I was only allowed to call home once a week, and it was on Sundays when I think AT&T had like 10 cents a minute, and then I could only talk for like 10 minutes or 10 or 15 minutes with my parents. And so email, we had email, but nobody had email in Hawaii, and we had like blitz mail, as students, and people were writing letters, like, so you'd have to go to Hinman and get your letter, and then you respond, and okay, that was good luck on midterms, but it's like finals already by the time that we got the letter. So yeah, communication was weird, and I felt, but I felt academically prepared to go to Dartmouth, so I didn't, but like the sort of the homesickness and sort of missing friends, missing people, being cold all the time, those things I think sort of played a bit into it. But communication was hard. I find it so simple now that and I appreciate being able to be connected to to my son who's there now. So
Hala, a lot of people, attendees as well as speakers are saying, there's a lot more Hawaiian presence there. You were just there recently. Do you want to say a little bit about that and about your experience, like taking those first few steps?
Yeah, definitely. I think my freshman year, I met a lot of Native Hawaiians, but I don't know if Uncle Ina's familiar with her, but she's an alumni, Momi Tolentino. She was the former president of Hokupa'a during my freshman year, and I feel like she helped us a lot, like helped me transition into Dartmouth, and even though it was a very small community, I feel like majority of the active Hokupa'a members were seniors at the time, so they were very busy doing their own thing with their thesis and whatever. But they just hosted small events here and there, like a mochi making event, or we tried roasting a pig in a imu with whatever we had with foil and rocks, but they didn't have holes in them, so that didn't work very well. But it was all about the experiences we had together that very just positively impacted my freshman year. And I think Stephen Abbott was also another big he supported me a lot as well. He knew, at least from my class, he knew like each of us very well, because of course he read our applications and stuff, being the admissions, one of the person who reviews all the applications for admissions. But even throughout the years, he just made sure that we were doing what we had to do and we had all the support we needed. And if we didn't have it, he would help us, because he also lived in the Native American house. So that I think helped us a lot as well. But yeah, did that answer the question? I think.
Yeah, no, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so last question I have for the group. So how has attending Dartmouth how was attending Dartmouth as a Pacific Islander? How has it shaped you in your life after Dartmouth, both personally and professionally? Anyone want to start?
Well, for me, I think, from the professional perspective, Dartmouth did what we would expect an Ivy League school kind of do. It just sort of added credibility and respect, that I might not have gotten based on my appearance or my behavior, whatever. I had like long hair when I was in medical school, and wear aloha shirts and things like that. So, I'm thankful for that. I wish the world wasn't like that, but that's totally true. There are definitely times when people, oh, you went to Dartmouth, and then it was kind of like, oh, okay, now either a little more respect, or we know we got to take you seriously. So, I appreciate that part of it. I think the surprise part that I was thinking is, like how much it helped me really connect with Native Hawaiian culture as well. And so, through the thesis work, connecting with all these communities so quickly. There was this Ava bar that was popular at the time, and Dartmouth allowed me to charge Ava to the anthropology department, which, really kind of helped me to connect with a lot of people who are, I would say, movers and shakers in the Native Hawaiian community today, partly because there's all that stuff going on with the Akaka Bill and sovereignty at the time. And then Native Hawaiian language as well. I connected with people who were professors or Hawaiian language speakers, and some were my roommates during my time when I was doing my thesis research, and so we spoke Hawaiian, and I learned enough to be functional. So now in my professional life, I actually treat a lot of people from Ni'ihau, which is really the biggest population of people who are primary first language Hawaiian speakers. And they really, need help understanding like their medicines when they need to take it and stuff like that. And so I'm able to utilize Olelo Hawaii that way. Nothing compared to what, Kala is like the next generation that has now, expanded on Olelo Hawaii and is bringing it back, much more widespread. So I'm sure she can tell a lot more about that, but I feel like I kind of got that bridge in between. And a lot of it came from Dartmouth.
Yeah, your experience is kind of like, it kind of contrasts Kala's, because you kind of, in some ways you went to Dartmouth and you discovered a little bit more about your Hawaiian identity. Whereas Kala, when you talk about it, you kind of came in knowing that you had a responsibility to educate, which most undergrads, most freshmen do not go into their undergrad experience doing. How was being, going to Dartmouth as a Pacific Islander, how has it shaped you personally, professionally? It's only been a few months.
Yeah, it has been. Let's see. I think similar to Kapono's answer, it definitely opened a lot of doors for me. Both of my parents they're educators as well. My father's an associate professor at Kahakaula Kelikolani, the Hawaiian Language College in Hilo. And then my mother's a teacher at the Hawaiian Medium School, which I attended, Kekula o Nawahiokalani o Pu'u. So I think a lot of people expected me to attend UH Hilo. And I was like, I want to see what else, like, what can I do? Like, what potential do I have beyond language revitalization, if it's through other fields of interest, or if it's science, if it's anthropology, or so on. A lot of these, especially for anthropology, I think one reason why I majored in anthropology while at Dartmouth, it helped me connect back to Hawaii in some way. So I think just during my time at Dartmouth, it definitely, and even after, it opened a lot of doors, especially going into the field of philanthropy. I didn't even know what philanthropy did, what it looked like, and indigenous philanthropy on top of that. I was like, I'm actually doing this right now, being able to give back to communities, indigenous communities, and even seeing some of the nonprofit organizations that I didn't even know existed on my island as well. So just seeing multiple ways that I can help beyond language revitalization is one way that I think Dartmouth has helped me develop professionally, and yeah.
So thank you.
I mean, I think I'm totally impressed by your language speaking ability, Kala, and you too, Kapono. For me, I think back about, when did language, I know there was Punana Leo, like sort of immersion programs that were kind of happening in the 90s, but they were like pilot programs, and I was like, well, what's that going to be like? Are they going to teach math in Hawaiian? Are they gonna, and not really understanding what the school was gonna be like or about, and I sort of missed that boat, and I and I took Chinese because I took Mandarin because I thought it was Chinese, and I did my foreign study program in Beijing, which was amazing. But nobody in China thought I was Chinese either, so it's kind of funny that out comes Mandarin when I'm there speaking. And then after going to Dartmouth, it took me a long time to move back to Hawaii. So like I left in 92 and I came back in 22. And so in those 30 years away, I don't know how much identity was wrapped up in, how I was living or being, in terms of Pacific Islander, besides my name. And if you know what Kili'i Opula'oho means, which could be something totally different, table talk. After that, then there wasn't really a lot. And so for me now, having been back, I think personally and professionally, I think my greatest sort of connection aside from my high school is Dartmouth folks, and being connected to Dartmouth students now, through my probably my son, and then also alumni that are here, from Dartmouth, that I'm like learning. It's like I took a 30-year break from being Hawaiian, and now I actually get to be. So I've gone to Lo'i and fish ponds and rock building and rock wall building, and trying to sort of learn. And I feel like I'm just beginning, and this part of the journey is kind of really interesting. Everything is new, so it's sort of discovery for me. And so I lean on people who are more knowledgeable and willing to share. And I think Native Hawaiians are always willing to share if you want to learn. So
Oh,
you know
hello. Oh, nice. So I want to any other comments or questions from the group that you didn't get a chance to share?
I wanted to add in, Dartmouth, I mentioned this in our previous conversations, but Dartmouth to me also taught me what to expect or how to be treated by an educational institution. And so, there were times with, like, I think University of Hawaii in particular, where I can think of examples, and I feel like I know that's not how you treat people. I know that's, these are not the rules that you have to follow. So I really appreciate that experience from Dartmouth, and the dedication of the professors in general, compared to what I hear from a lot of other people who went to other places.
Others? Thank you. Well, we've heard thank you guys so much. We've heard a little bit from the speakers. And so I did want to open up the discussion to take questions or even comments from speakers who are out there. Did anyone have questions for the speakers or no?
I'll start out with a comment.
Okay.
I am from the class of 68, and I guess I'm the second oldest here. Loi Chan is the class of 54. And I like to say we had a very different experience. In 68, Dartmouth was all male. And when I went to Dartmouth, similar experience with Kaylee. My parents didn't accompany me. I went to Dartmouth all by myself, and I landed in White River Junction and took a taxi or some other kind of transportation to the college. And I was all on my own. And we didn't have a Hawaiian club. We didn't have a Native American club. We were all in one, shall we say, fishbowl. And I think that was a very different experience. There were 5 people from Hawaii in my class. 3 of them graduated from Punahou, and the other one was from Hawaii Prep Academy. And I was the only public school student. I graduated from Lalehua. And we kind of, one of them I bonded with, the Cedric Cam, who's still a very good friend. And we were on a recent DAPA panel together on Asian American experience. But I agree with Keali'i that being from Hawaii gave you something special or different, but we were not necessarily treated differently because we were from Hawaii. The college didn't understand the difference between a surname and a first name because I have 2 first names, as you can tell. And the college on the matriculation certificate reversed my name. And I was put down as Tom Daniel. And the college apologized for this, and they later corrected it to Daniel Tom. So I don't think we had the kind of links to for example, the Native American or the Hawaiian or Asian American groups. And so we didn't have a sort of, what shall I call it, pillar or to go to.
For sure. Yeah, it was a much less diverse place, it sounds like. Thank you, Dan. There's a question from Stephanie Kala for you. She's curious, how did you maintain your Hawaiian language skills while you were at Dartmouth? And she'd like to hear more about your work now.
Right. I think the main thing that helped me maintain my Hawaiian was just calling my parents. I think I called them like almost every day my freshman year. My friends teased me a lot about that. They're like, "Oh my gosh, you're crazy." But that was one way I maintained my Hawaiian. But also just sort of creating our own community. Like on top of having Hokupa'a, we also tried to create our own Hawaiian language circle. So I think I did and Gabe, we created a Google form and asked all of our Hokupa'a members to see if they were interested in learning Hawaiian and to see what level, if they could read, if they could write, how many words do they know, roughly how many words, and if they would be interested in, I don't know, sitting in at a Hawaiian language class at UH Hilo. So there were maybe about like, a lot of them showed interest, but also Dartmouth is just, it's trimesters, everybody's super busy. And so I think there were about 2 students who sat in on classes at UH Hilo remotely through Zoom, which was very nice. But just having that exposure to Hawaiian, and then I think Gabe actually reached out to students at UH Manoa as well. So having them improve their Hawaiian and then try to speak it with me was one way that I also maintained my Hawaiian and also kind of kept my mind active, you know, and seeing like grammatical errors or like just spelling stuff. And I think it was fun. I definitely enjoyed that. And I didn't even expect to have that at Dartmouth at first, but yeah.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah.
I have a quick question. Also, hello, Claude. It's nice seeing you. Haven't seen you in a
Brandon.
while. This is actually about Native American and Indigenous studies. I've taken a class with Kala in the department before, so obviously it exists and it is a thing that's definitely growing right now at Dartmouth as well. But I guess for all the panelists, wondering if that was something that existed when you were there, were you able to take advantage of it? Kind of, I know we've heard a lot about your experiences as students, as human beings, but also thinking about your experience as like an academic and the things that you were able to learn at Dartmouth. Were you able to kind of learn more about Hawaiian culture and Indigenous studies more broadly during your time through the department or otherwise?
Well, I
I-
think I did, but it was through the anthropology department more. I mean, like I was saying, and I think I didn't get to mention about the foreign study program that started my senior year to Auckland, to Aotearoa. So that was another, hugely beneficial opportunity for me to go over there and take like Maori studies classes there. Ty is a professor at UH now in ethnic studies. So, that this kind of like anthropology was the label that kind of it was under at Dartmouth, but they kind of like opened the door to what now is changing. Like the people that I associated with, like Kehaulani Ka'aihui, she teaches American studies, so they kind of like get grouped differently now, I think, whereas at that time in Dartmouth, it was all under anthropology.
I didn't take any classes in Native American studies, NAS classes. I was in a couple college course classes where there was multiple faculty coming from different departments, and so I had exposure a couple of times to NAS professors, but and would always go to their talks. For me, I was more I don't know, when somebody asked me the question, I think I was running for student government on why I was in the Greek system, and that I would support institutions that discriminate just based on uh, on sex. And at that point, it kind of threw me. So then I went into women's studies, and I started taking classes, and then ended up getting a minor, which is all you could get back then in the field. And then that's, I could have parlayed that into professional career in organizational diversity. But yeah, NAS, I didn't take advantage of it, and I wish I had. If I could redo that chapter, I'd probably add a few classes there.
Yeah, Stephanie's asking again about language revitalization. Yeah, I was kind of wondering about that too. Kala, do you work with other groups on their language revitalization, right? Because there's a lot of indigenous languages that are right now on the brink of being lost. Like, I don't know, do you work with that?
That's definitely a goal for me in the future. Just I feel like at Dartmouth I got a little taste of it, just learning little words here and there in like Navajo and stuff. And yeah, I didn't really explain this before, but I just recently started working at Imilo Astronomy Center which is like an indigenous led astronomy center where they teach a lot about Mauna Kea and just how celestial navigation and so on. So I think they also had a planetarium show with like a series of, I think there was one with Navajo culture in it that talks about celestial observation. So it's definitely a goal for me to work with more indigenous cultures in the future. I don't know what that would look like. I'm also I haven't done a lot of work in language revitalization in that part, but definitely in philanthropy. I'm part of the Native Youth Grant Makers program, which is there's a cohort of 10 individuals, ages from like 18 to 24, where we learn more about philanthropy and then learn more about each other's communities and how seeing the struggles that are similar and somewhat different between Indigenous communities. So, yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think your story and like your family's story possibly shows how to revitalize language. Like Kili'i, when Kili'i and I were in school, this was pre, the Hawaiian language immersion charter schools hadn't really started up. They hadn't really become popular yet, right, Kili'i? And then, but it was kind of like in the 2000s that they started to become popular, and there were more and more of them. So, and then the product of all that is kind of you. So yeah, it's kind of a model or a template for what could happen, with other languages that are on the brink. We have a question from Ariel. So has anyone worked on the Maui relief efforts or would like to speak about Maui? And we do also, we do have a couple of for those that are interested in giving. The speakers did have a couple of recommended nonprofits. The Hawaii Community Foundation was recommended by more than one speaker, and then also the Pacific Whale Foundation. But Kapona, you've done some work on Maui. Do you want to share what you've seen?
So I volunteered over there, basically as a physician, and that was a few weeks after the fire had happened. I mean, I understand immediately there was a need for wound care and stuff like that. That was pretty acute. There wasn't that much left by the time that I went. Actually, most of what I was seeing was COVID. So people were put into these shelters, and then COVID started circulating around. And then they opened up. Thankfully, there were the resorts that were basically opened up as shelters. And so there were rooms where they could put people to isolate for COVID. So I was really treating COVID and releasing people from isolation for COVID for the most part. But there were some, we were trying to reach some people that were homeless and did not want to be in the shelters, and kind of reaching out to them. The need that I was seeing at that time was more like the PTSD fallout from the things that people went through or what they saw. And then, of course, the whole trying to connect people to social services. How are they going to get back on their feet as far as housing and other things like that? And then not having contact information, not having a phone, really trying to help navigate all that. I suggest Hawaii Community Foundation. That I think that they are the most well-respected local organization that's in contact with most of the other grassroots organizations. So and I have friends who work for them too, but they that's what I would suggest donating to. But yeah, that's really what I saw. I wanted to mention something before I forget about Hawaiian language revitalization. I don't do it a lot, but just I think like I wanted to mention to this more to Kala, but everyone else too, is that there's been a lot of revitalization, but even in like healthcare language, lots of times there aren't really good words for some of the things that we're trying to explain. There's a word for kopa'a, like that's what we call diabetes, but that just means sugar. Kotopi'i is like full blood or like big, like blood up, but not really blood pressure. I don't even know if there really is an official word for cholesterol. My patients tend to say Aila Koto. This is Ni'ihau, so they have T's a lot in how they say it. So Aila Koko, Aila Koto is like blood oil. But anyway, for example, like Kala, I as a gift to Jerry Alohe Walker, I tried translating CPR into Hawaiian. Like, what's the word for defibrillator? And how's the best way to explain the word for CPR? So we were talking about you can kind of like say the motion, or you want to say that we're pumping, or what's the best way to emphasize it? So I just wanted to mention that as I think those are things that we still, as it becomes a more like vibrant language, what is the best way to describe some of these healthcare terms is kind of an interesting front. We've hired Ni'ihau coordinators to help us, and one of them was a daughter of Tuti Kanahele, who's well known as a language professor, and we collaborated on a lot of those ideas, but also Niihau community members for some of these terms that I guess we kind of invented.
I did
Sorry.
some things with relief, but I can't really speak about it. But I would say that there was a concert that was happening, like I think the following weekend after August 8th, and there's a new student, 27, Faith Paredes, and her parents who were one of the halau that were performing. And so I wanted to thank DAPA because I know that I had sent just a sort of an announcement that that was happening, and DAPA, BATA, DGALA, NAD, and the CEC, so the Communities Exchange Committee, sent it all around the world for that to happen. And for anybody who might be on this call that either participated or donated, I just wanted to say thanks.
Lonnie Hubbard, who's in the audience and has spoken a little bit, has Lonnie, do you want to say a little bit about your insights on Maui? She has loved ones who've lost their homes and
yeah.
family. Yeah.
I have strong ties to West Maui. My great grandmother was from the Pili. And I've gone over, I have a classmate from Kamehameha who lives on Maui, and we've volunteered at Honokowai, which is a valley that used to be a thriving valley in the 1800s, and with agriculture and the water diversion, it completely dried up. There is Maui Cultural Lands, who is headed by Ed Lindsay. He's since passed away, but his son Ekolu is running it now. And he has volunteer work days where you just go and remove invasive species. And so I've gone over many times and kind of feel tied to the Aina there. I mean, I don't know what you want me to talk on, Jackie, just, it was such a, I mean, the Lahaina we know today is just not what, used to be in the 1800s. It was such, it was a rich a site of royalty in the 1800s. There was a lot of ulu trees that were planted, and that kind of, even though it's on the leeward side of the island, which is typically more dry, the ulu trees kind of provided shade and made it a more like wet microclimate, if you will. And Hawaiians knew how to take lands, or take the water rather, from West Maui and divert it through Auais, and they had agriculture, and it was just not at all how we know it today. And I've since learned there's called shifting baseline syndrome, and I think we're all guilty of that, every one of us, because what it's defined as environmental generational amnesia, and it's sort of a gradual change in the accepted norm for a condition of the natural environment due to lack of experience, memory, and knowledge of its past condition, right? So what we know of as Lahaina today, 100 years ago, my ancestors were like, yeah, this is, it's just different, right? But we kind of just accept it as normal. So it's just, yeah, go ahead, Jackie.
Well, I mean, we think of the west side of all of the islands of Hawaii are the dry side, right? And so, but you're saying ancient Hawaiians that diverted the water to Lahaina, so it was more wet?
There was like a 17-acre royal fish pond that has since, because of the water diversion, completely dried up, and they just cemented it eventually. But it was wet, and it was, I mean, just not at all like, I mean, now Lahaina, and you just think of it as so dry and just, dry brush. I mean, it wasn't like that. And it's so sad. It just, it just makes my heart sad, really. Just what slowly, over the last 200 years, what we've done, to the environment, and just all the changes that were implemented. And it's all due to sugarcane. If you don't know, like in the probably by like the mid 1800s, sugarcane took over, and Pioneer Mill had, basically slowly bought up all the land. And so sugarcane is such a water hungry plant, like between 500 to 1,000 liters of water. Only it takes that much water to create a pound of sugar. So you can imagine all of the water that was just being pumped, during this time in the late 1800s. And then, of course, probably by the early 1900s, late 1900s rather, that's kind of when ag sort of moved out. Pioneer Mill closed, and then tourism took over. And then a lot of the agriculture land got bought out by West Maui Land Corp, and for development, right? And then that serves tourism, and now the water's being diverted to hotels and swimming pools, really. So
Thank you
anyway.
so much, Sunny. I mean, I think that, a lot of that is not being talked about. Ian Tapu just joined us. Ian, do you want to say hi? We're fielding questions from
I am so hello. I'm Tapu, class of 08. I'm in the middle of trial, and so I just ran away from trial right now. Happy to be here. Me and my Pacific Island time. I'm supposed to be here when I'm supposed to be. Yeah. Thanks for having me for the last few minutes.
Other speakers, do you have questions for Tapu? Thanks for coming in.
I have a question for Tapu. I mentioned that I knew of a Tongan soccer player that preceded me, and I guess I feel like, okay, how was it for you? Because we were like, oh yeah, we had Hawaiians. That was like our saving grace. Did you feel like you were accepted? Or did you feel like I'm the only Tongan? Or did you feel like, yeah, the Hawaiians got my back? Or I'm like, did you feel supported, or did you feel like you're the the only non-Hawaiian Pacific Islander?
I gosh, that's a loaded question. I will preface it by saying I love Dartmouth, bleed green. I'm sure I'm going to force my kids to apply there, but I will say that as the only Tongan who was at Dartmouth at the time, one, I think the Native American program at the time wasn't as expansive and inclusive as it is today, right? Like, I think the way that we talk about Native issues, it's always with the understanding that it's indigenous. When I was there, I remember going to like a NAT event, and everyone's like, okay, what tribe are you from? I was like, oh, I'm not from a tribe. Like, okay, well, you're Hawaiian then. And I was like, oh, but I'm not Hawaiian. So like, oh, so why are you here? And I'm glad like the conversation has expanded to include like other indigenous folks from the Pacific. Hawaiians had my back for sure. I was always the cousin to everything, right? Like cousins to the Nads, I was always, I think, one step outside the circle. I think it wasn't until graduation where it really weighed on everyone what it meant to be Samoan and Tongan in the diaspora, right? For like graduation, for example, my sister did a full-on taualunga at the NAD graduation, and I think it was the first time that they saw something outside of Hawaiian culture. And I think that it kind of opened their eyes about, okay, if we're going to accept Hawaiians as indigenous folks, then we have to, by necessity, also include other indigenous folks from the Pacific. And so I'm happy that there was a Tongan person before me, because honestly, when I was there, everyone's like, oh, I think you're the first one, which I think goes to show like that there lacks that institutional memory. Because trust me, I would have loved to have been connected to other Tongan people who went to Dartmouth, because it was a culture shock, to say the least. I don't know if people knew how to support me, because people didn't even know what Tongans were, right? They didn't even know what a Samoan was. I mean, I had to point to like media representatives, representation, like, oh, well, The Rock is Samoan. So, I mean, I guess you kind of know a little bit about Samoan people. Yeah. Hi, Nora.
Yeah.
I see you on the call.
Yeah. Tapu, I'm glad you're a part of the discussion because this is we're highlighting the Pacific Islander part of the AAPI, right? But when we talk about that, I guess because Hawaii is a state, most of us have some kind of Hawaii connection. Most of you guys are ethnically Hawaiian, and so, but there's all kinds of Pacific Islanders that are not being included, including Maori Americans and Tongan Americans, and and others. So I'm glad you're here.
Yeah, and I will say that Dartmouth was supportive when I advocated for myself, but I think as a first generation, it's hard to advocate for yourself in a space that doesn't look like you, that doesn't, have the same values as you sometimes. Like, for example, I was really excited that I did my language credit by showing that I speak Samoan. So I thought that was a really great opportunity for Dartmouth to recognize, my family's language, which I don't think they needed to, because it's not like they have a Samoan language expert on campus to verify, my background in history. But it was nice of them to at least go the extra mile to make sure that my language was recognized.
How did you demonstrate that did you have to demonstrate that to anyone?
Yeah. So they actually found some people from UH, and
To
I just
talk to?
honestly had a conversation. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was like,
Amazing.
okay, Auntie, sorry for a little bit.
Amazing. Yeah. Okay. Other questions for Tapu?
I think
Oh.
that it's going to be an interesting way forward with Indigenous, and because I know that they are looking at Indigenous people that are from other continents now, and I know that at least this year my understanding during orientation included Mexican Indigenous people as well as Latin American Indigenous people, and I think that that's going to be an interesting dialogue with that unfolds as who gets to be in the Indigenous category versus the international student category, and whether support looks similar in terms of resources that are allocated for those students that are coming. But I think time will tell a little bit on that.
Awesome. Guys, thank you all so much. I'm gonna go ahead and close up the formal portion of the event. And then if people want to hang out and just chat a little bit, feel free to stay. The next DAPA event celebrating the 25th anniversary is going to be December 7th, highlighting the South Asian experience. And we shared some of the other resources. So other ways to connect, if you have a story, if you have an experience that you feel is not being reflected, please contact us. And we'd love to share your story. Anything else?
Thanks, Jackie. I just wanted to say a few words about DAPA 25 as well, if people haven't heard about it. Also, I just want to thank all of our speakers today for their time, and everyone on the DAPA side who organized, as well as Dartmouth Club of Hawaii and NAD for co-hosting. Yeah, and this is a part of a virtual event series leading up to DAPA 25, which is this May 3rd to 5th. I know that some people have reunions this year, which will be in June, so this will be the month before. If you attend, you'll get to connect with other alums the way that we have been doing, and you'll hear from awesome speakers like George Takei and Helen Zia. If there are hotel reservations open, so as you know, those go fast, so please do that. And we'll also send out a more formal registration form in December, so keep an eye out. As Jackie said, our next virtual event will be on South Asian perspectives, and this will be on December 7th. And yeah, thanks everyone. Oh, and also just a little side note, if you have any photos of Dartmouth history, I don't know if Lonnie is still on, like the first Hokupa meeting, first luau, like those kinds of things I think are really important for us to document. As we've mentioned, we have like very little institutional memory, institutional history. It's really up to us. So we're trying to archive a lot of that as we work towards our 25th. And yeah, follow us on social media and keep an eye out for other events like this.
Sarah, I'll look and send some to you. If I can you send me your email or post it in the chat?
Yes, post the DEPA 25th email.
That was pre-cell phones, Lonnie. So
I know, but I think I
how many
have.
pictures you have from that
There,
meeting?
we can dig up something in some box somewhere.
Right, okay.
Okay, thanks, Sarah.
Yeah, thanks. And yeah, thanks everyone for joining and for participating. It's been great to talk to you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.